Hello, welcome to episode 96 of Daryl Show Your Work. So, in this episode, I'll actually be targeting the snmp protocol, all right, to gain access to our target host. But before I dive any further into that, I'd like to give the usual disclaimer that I give prior to doing any sort of red teaming or offensive security activity, that this is for educational, ethical, and research purposes only, that any sort of malicious actions that may or may not come from someone watching my video, I do not take responsibility for, nor do I condone. So, to give a high level overview of what SNMP is, it's actually an application layer protocol on the OSI model that transmits management data between network devices. All right, and it also runs on port 161. All right, so to get started here, um, wanted to also show that prior to the video, if my lab catches up with me here, that I did some prior enumeration and got our target. I don't know if I could get things to behave on my end. Okay, so let's see that. Okay, here we are. All right, so here's my target IP. All right, so our target host is located at 10.3.26.74. All right, so I'm gonna first start out with doing a service scan against our target. All right. Okay, so we can see that it didn't return back anything for port 161, but more than likely that's because actually SNMP is a UDP or related protocol, and by default nmap runs TCP related scans. So that's probably why we're not seeing any sort of UDP related protocols showing up here, including port 161, which is the default port for SNMP. All right, so I'm going to have to run a UDP scan here and see if we can um, find if that port is indeed open. So, but one thing, but I wanted to note before jumping into that is that we do need to remember which of these ports are open, because that's going to be important to another part of the video here. So keep in mind these ports. So we have some NetBIOS related ports open here, as well as a SMB related port, and then the RDP related port here. All right. So to get started on that UDP scan, I'm gonna say lowercase s, uppercase U, and of course lowercase s, uppercase V for the service scan. And this time, I'm gonna just specify port 161. So that's really all I wanna know about as far as any sort of UDP ports that are available. All right, so I'm gonna paste that target there. All right, and let's let it rip. All right, so we can see that port 161 is indeed open, and this verifies that that is a UDP related port, and that SNMP is running on this open port, and it's running version 1. All right, so if we remember from my prior video, that I use a command where we basically came up with any SMB related scripts within nmap scripting engine. We came up with a full list, and we were able to see those. And I chose a few scripts from that list to run against our target host, against that open SMB port. So I'm going to do something similar here with SNMP, and run and come up with that list, so then I can choose which scripts I may want to run against our target. All right, so in order to do that, I'm gonna say list dash all, and then what we're looking for is located at user share nmap. All right, we want to say scripts. All right, then we're going to pipe this out, and we want to grep. Remember, grep we could specify any term that we want to highlight specifically from a file that we're looking at. So within here, I want to just basically want it just to come back with any place that has SMP, with any basically with any script that has SMP in it, and that should give us the full list of the SMP related scripts. All right, that I can run using the nmap scripting engine. All right, so it's definitely not as long as the SMB scripting engine list. All right, but we still have quite a few here. So I definitely want to try to brute force our target. But first, I want to see what word lists are available to use if I wanted to brute force our target, just to make sure that I have a word list available. All right, so in order to do that, I'm going to run a similar command, except I'm going to aim this at a different directory. And I'm going to aim this at, oops, well, yeah, I'm going to leave that there. NSE um, lib for library, and then data. All right, and then we can get rid of this E, and then also get rid of these quotes. We don't need that. All right, so this is going to, hopefully there's a word list in here for me to use in order to brute force some credentials, and it is. So apparently so it should be using the SMP communities list. All right, and so what I'm going to be brute forcing here is not necessarily username, password pairs. All right. So I'm actually going to be brute forcing something known as SMP community strings, and they're password like credentials for SNMP to control access to network devices. So it's not going to, again, they're not necessarily the password or username pair. So that's what I'm going to be brute forcing here. And so let's get started on that. So let me go back a few. Okay, so I'm going to leave these details here, except this time I'm going to add a -- script. All right, and then I want to say equals. Then we want to specify that we want to use snp dash brute. All right, and that should be good to go. So let me just check my syntax here. All right. All right, so let's run this brute force against our target host, and let's see what it comes back with. All right, so it looked like it came back with valid credentials for the public community strings, private community strings, and secrets community strings. All right, so the next thing that I want to do is I want to run something called snmpwalk. So what snmpwalk is, it's an application that's going to help me to enumerate snmp even more when combining it with these user strings. All right, so we know we have a user string known as public, we have one known as private, we have one known as secret. All right, so I'm gonna give it the public community string here to do some enumeration, and the first type of enumeration that I want to do, well, basically I'm gonna run something that's going to give us as much information as possible on the anything SMP, all things SMP related on our target, and we're going to see how exhaustive that list actually is. All right, so I'm gonna say snmp walk, and I want to tell it we're gonna remember we're dealing with. I have to give it the version of snmp that was running. So it was running version 1 if we remember from that service scan. All right, and then all right, I'm gonna say -c, and then this is where I'm gonna give it the community string. So I'm gonna this time I'm gonna use the public community string. All right, and then I got to give it our target IP. All right, so let's run that and let's see what information we get back about our target and its use of the SNMP protocol. And like I said, we can see a lot here, and a lot of it is not really human readable. All right, so looking at this doesn't. I'm not going to go all the way back up because it's a lot of information, but it doesn't really tell us like much of like anything. All right, so um, and there's another thing that I can do here is I can actually run. Basically, I'm gonna run a command that's gonna run that full list. If you remember that list of, of scripting engine scripts in nmap, I'm gonna use a command where I'm gonna run all those scripting engine commands all on this target host, and then that's going to give me back a bunch of different information to an that it enumerated, and I'm thinking that should probably be a lot more readable than this. All right, so let's do that. So I'm gonna go back in my history here. All right, and we're going to change the script. So instead of specifying brute, if I just simply put an asterisk, that's the wild card. So that says basically run anything, all SNMP related scripts, or run that against the target host. All right. But the one thing too I want to do before I run that, I want to pipe that out into a file, so then we can view that all in one. We can view that all in one place. All right, and even use it later. If for some reason you need to return to that information later and send it to some folks or whatever. All right, so just give it a few seconds for it to do its thing, and then I'm going to display the contents of this file that is storing everything into after it's done. Okay, so let's look in our local directory just to make sure that file is there. I'm gonna do a list command. All right, so the snmp underscore info file is indeed there. So I'm gonna do a cat snmp underscore info, and let's see what information it comes back with. All right, so we have quite a bit of information here. So let's scroll up a bit. Okay, all right, hold on. Went up to a little too far. Well, no, I didn't. Let me see. Yeah, I did. Okay. Ugh, could this Okay, here we are. All right, so first this tells us the software that the protocol is using. All right, so this is great if we want to know what particular SMP related software is being utilized by our target, and we can see that there's a bunch of AWS related um, um, software. We have drivers here, and then we have tools for Windows. All right, then going down just a little bit here, we could also see those remember it ran the brute too, so then we could see those community strings. But there's some parts of this that I wanted to show in particular. or we can see the running processes here. Here we are. Okay, so now we have users. All right, so when you can see all the user accounts that are on the on the target. All right, so we see we have an administrator account, we have something called a default account, we have a guest account, and we have a WDA utility account and an admin account. All right, so it's provided us with user accounts that if I wanted to brute force some credentials, maybe targeting a different protocol, now I have user accounts. So going back to the beginning of the video when I said remember those other ports that were open with that first nmap scan that I ran. Well, remember we saw some RDP related ports. We've seen that RDP related port open. We see that also see those net bios and SMB related ports open. All right. So how about we take the information that we got from here and we use one of these accounts and plug it into Hydra, and let's try to find some clear text passwords and credentials that we could then use to successfully log on to our target host. All right, so let's go back to the bottom here. All right, so I'm gonna say Hydra, and I'm gonna say lowercase l, and so I'm gonna give it the administrator account. All right, and then I'm gonna say dash uppercase P, and this is where I have to specify where the word list is located that we're going to use our dictionary attack, where that's what directory that's located in. So it's in Metasploit dash framework. All right, and then slash data word list, and we're going to use the Unix underscore passwords .txt file. All right, and then let's see, let's say T4. All right, then we're going to specify where we're aiming at, and then I need to give it the protocol. So let's aim at port 445, that SMB port that was open. All right, and let's see if we could get a password for the administrator account. All right, so just checking my syntax here. Looks like I should be good. All right, and let's run that. All right, that fast. All right, so we got a password back for Elizabeth. All right, for the administrator account. And so that brings me to the end of my video here. So just quickly, just wanted to run through what was accomplished here. So I showed how if we just use the default nmap scan without specifying which type of the connection protocol to use, that it's going to run that TCP protocol by default, and you're not going to necessarily be able to find your UDP related protocols when running that scan to be able to see if the status of those ports, to be able to see if they're open or not. So then I ran the second scan to be able and specify port 161, which is the default port of SNMP, and basically found that that port was indeed open and running version 1 of the protocol. But that first scan was equally as important because it also told us, okay, what TCP ports are open. All right, so I then came up with that. Also showed that list of um, different scripts within Nmap scripting engine that we could run against the SNMP protocol. So first I decided on the brute force script. But before running that, I just wanted to make sure that we had a word list associated with that, which I found that we did. And running that brute force, it came back with community strings, not necessarily username, password combinations, but user strings. All right. So then I gave one of those user strings. It came back with a user string of public, private, and secret. I used the public user string, gave it to snmpwalk to then try to give me more insight as far as all things SNMP on our target, and it came back with a bunch of non-human readable output, which we maybe if we wanted to feed that output to a machine or something that could then translate it, that would be good. But as far as looking at anything human readable, it was just a lot of information that would have been way too difficult to weed through to get anything valuable out of. So instead, went back to the went back to nmap and basically ran the scripting engine again, but this time, since the amount of scripts weren't very exhaustive, it was relatively short amount of snmp related scripts. I decided to use the wild card and run all of those scripts against our target, which didn't actually take very long, and it gave me again a pretty large list of information, but more readable. And I was able to deduce from that um, um, actually the software, the SNMP software that's being ran on our target host, which a lot of it was AWS related, but also I was able to see some user accounts. All right, so we had administrator account, admin account. I think it was a guest account, a utility account. So of course I went for the low hanging fruit and decided, hey, let's try to brute force that administrator account. Um, um, you using Hydra, but targeting a different protocol, a protocol that we found using the first nmap scan, that TCP nmap scan that I ran. All right, and we know that one of those protocols was SMB, which I ultimately decided on targeting. So told Hydra, gave Hydra the administrative username, told it to where to aim its dictionary attack at, which is our target host IP, and the targeted SMP, excuse me, the SMB protocol, and it returned back with the clear text password of Elizabeth. All right, just gave an example of a way in which we can, which the SMP protocol can be targeted, and then any information that we enumerate from the details of that protocol, we could then use that to then target other protocols and gain user credentials. So please like, share, and subscribe. Most importantly, show your work. And until next time, take care of yourself and God.